I pretended to be French for 10 months. So this happened quite a while ago, which only just caught up to me a few weeks ago. About 11 months ago I moved into a new house as a temporary sort of thing until I could get the money together to sort something out properly. I was hoping to have already moved out by this point. On my second day after I had finished unpacking, I decided to break the house in with a nice acid trip. I'd brought some with me that I'd recently bought but not had the chance to use yet. Things were going well with the trip, but then it seemed to be getting really intense, and I quickly realized that the taps were much stronger than I had been told they were. And I thought being locked up in the unfamiliar house wasn't helping me relax. So I figured the best thing to do to relax would be to go for a stroll, because I was starting to get pretty overwhelmed at that point. So I left the house to start my walk, and my next-door neighbor happened to be just arriving at the same time. It's a street of tightly packed terraced houses, so next door's door is about 1 meter away from mine. I'd not met anybody on my street yet and didn't realize this was a friendly, tight-knit community where people talk to each other. She said something along the lines of, "Hello, nice to meet you. My name's," her name, "Are you new to the area?" So basically I do this thing sometimes when people try to sell me things on the street, etc., where I pretend I can't speak English. I remember a few words from my GCSE French, so I just say some nonsense sentences and then people usually leave me alone. In the state I was in, this conversation seemed like it would be way too intense for me, and French just sort of came to me as my default response to the situation. My exact words were, "Je voudrais une boulangerie," one of my favorite lines to use, and I shrugged my shoulders a bit with a weak smile. She pretty much just left me to it after that, and I got on my way. I did my walk and got home about 2 hours later. I was tripping majorly, so the walk ended up taking a lot longer than it needed to. When I got home though, my next-door neighbor was stood in her doorway talking to another neighbor who was stood outside. I tried to keep my head down because I couldn't handle any more human interaction, but she waved at me and said, "Bonjour." So I instinctively returned the bonjour and got inside my house as fast as possible. When I got in, I started freaking out straight away because I realized that I'd just become French, and now 2 of the neighbors think I can't speak any English. The next day when I woke up, I realized the best thing I could, as an Englishman, was just live with the life for the rest of my short stay in this house to avoid the excruciating embarrassment of having pretended to be French for seemingly no reason. Fast forward 10 months, I still live here, and at this point I'm in deep. My life on this street is a web of lies. I've perfected my French accent, and over the course of 10 months French me has learned a decent amount of English so he can hold disjointed conversation. I'd gotten to know the neighbors pretty well, and I was the nice quirky French guy on the street. I didn't let the lie slip ever. Because every day and every conversation I had just meant that it would be even worse if anyone ever discovered I wasn't French. If I had friends come over, I don't have many, so it wasn't too bad. They knew I never speak to the neighbors because of my strange situation. Most of them found it amusing, at least. Things were going okay, and I wasn't too worried about being exposed anymore because I'd gotten so used to it. I'm not home that much, and when I am, I rarely leave the house for any reason, so I only had to do it for maybe 5 minutes a day when I was out on my street. If anything, it was a nice way to spice up my day when I got to take on my French persona. French me somehow had much better social skills than the real me, even if his English was a bit limited. But then there was the day it all came crashing down. I was walking to my car and saw one of the neighbors coming towards me from the opposite direction with someone else next to her I didn't recognize. She stopped to say hi, as she normally does. And then she says to her friend, "This is the guy the first was telling you about. You might be able to see where this is going." Her friend hits me with a question in French that I didn't understand a word of, and I knew he was actually French straight away because his accent was way better than mine. I didn't know what to do, and I just froze. Every second that went past just made it so much more painful, and after way too long of a pause I just decided I had to come clean. I told her I wasn't actually French and couldn't speak French, and then I tried to play it off like some kind of practical joke I'd been doing on everyone. Nobody was buying that. I fast walked straight to my car and then let the embarrassment just swallow me for a while. I haven't spoken to any of my neighbors since, some of which I'd struck up a friendly relationship with over those 10 months. I make sure nobody is around now whenever I leave the house. And I do a loop around the block in my car if any of my neighbors are walking down the street when I get home, so that I never come into contact with them. Every time I think about the day I was discovered, the embarrassment physically hurts me.